Hey, Scott Jordan and Mark Warner here for Jancast number 125 for June 16th, 2022. Well, Mark, good to see you again. It's been 2 weeks since our last Jancast, and it was a great one with Jim Barnell. Got a lot of views on that one, a lot of interest in it. So those of you that didn't see it,
they have no idea.
It's right below this one on the Jancast page.
Yes, you have no idea what you missed. It was engaging and exciting and enthusiastic.
Well, I think the interest was high because it's a new category that some people are not familiar with. I've had many people say, "Why can't I just use my regular neutral cleaner?" I said, "You got to listen to the show. Got to listen to the show."
Yeah.
So Mark, you were out on the road, and the most important thing, and we're not going to say where you went, but you did have to drive a pretty good distance. How was the gas prices, or how were the gas prices?
$100 to fill up.
Oh man, wow.
Yeah, that kind of stops you in your tracks, right? Like, whoa, wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it was traveling into other states. You get to see how the prices tend to vary a little bit, state to state.
Yeah.
It's always amazing to me that, living near Philadelphia, New Jersey always has cheaper gas.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
And
it has to do with
they used to have to pump the gas for you. Now they don't have to do that any longer, but it didn't change the price though.
Well, that's because there were no workers left that wanted to pump gas.
Yeah, actually, it was good. It was good timing for that, right?
Right. But the biggest takeaway I had from doing that was it felt. Oops, sorry about that. It felt great to be out face to face with folks and being able to engage with them, find out what their problems and their concerns were, or what they're trying to solve. And just having those kinds of conversations, which you can't always have if you're trying to live life through a webcam.
Yeah.
So, it was a good event. Over 20 different vendors were involved with booths, and about 250 attendees. And
good turnout.
3 different educational seminars, and I was a speaker for one of those seminars, Steve DeVito and myself. And we tapped in Jack Collins via the internet using a 5G cell phone linked up to a TV monitor. And yes, it was.
You did a MacGyver broadcast there.
It was 100% MacGyver broadcast. Because Steve and I tried like 10 ways to get this to work. And the only way we could get it to work, because of the location and the sketchiness of cell service and a metal frame building that interfered with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and all that, the only way we could make it work was with his cell phone held up like it's the camera on the audience, linked by an adapter to a TV monitor that we brought along. So,
wow.
So that was, a little MacGyvering, but it worked out kind of cool. But, my big takeaway is that, you just don't know how much you miss the live interaction until it's taken away from you, right?
Yeah.
People don't know what they, are missing until they lose it, kind of thing. And life changed in March of 2020 when we went through, the entire shutdown, and everything we did was all digital and virtual, and and Zoom became a verb and a noun added to Webster's dictionary. And it didn't mean anything prior to that, but up to that point, it now it's part of now you hear people saying we're Zooming.
If we'd only been given a stock tip to buy Zoom.
Yeah, right.
Beforehand.
Well, like if somebody walked up to you and said, "Yeah, we were Zooming," it would have meant something totally different back when I went to Penn State.
Yeah, depending upon what state you're in. Yeah.
So just kind of funny. And then, but the question is, are we we've gotten past the term a new normal. The question is, are we actually changing back to the old normal, which is actually engaging with people as live, face to face, one-on-one? I mean, back in 2020, we went into that lockdown and nobody saw anybody in person. No. And then you had people running around saying, all you got to do is use my cup of coffee here and put it in a trigger bottle and add a little sugar and spray it and you're good to go.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Well, back when we started doing the COVID videos, that was a big thing. It was like my competition or our competition was saying every one of their disinfectant products were effective against COVID-2. And it was like, no, that's not the case. You know, oh yeah, sure it is. And then there's people selling sprays that you walk your body through them, and a miracle cure that would kill everything off. I mean, there was some crazy stuff going on back then.
I remember the newscasts of people in China, like would before they could go to work, they had to walk through a tent that would like literally fumigate them. And didn't we look into that? And it turned out like some of the products that they were working with were somewhat bleach based.
Yeah.
Like the big question, like, oh my gosh, what's that doing to people?
Yeah.
But there was all kinds of crazy stuff going on. But I remember the COVID updates back then, you were calling out people that were making claims like, no, your cup of coffee with cream and sugar is not going to kill COVID, whether you claim it does or not.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It was crazy back then. Well, I'm pretty pleased that the EPA seems to, I mean, even though looking into the data that we're going to talk about, it started back in 2016, they really did put in place a good process for keeping track of emerging pathogens and what that means, so that they've got a good system in place now.
I was, I have to say, as we were kind of going over the notes and thinking about all this in our prep, I was thinking about that too, Scott. I was thinking, and they did this back in 2016, and about the biggest thing we were worried about in 2016 was, well, we weren't. We just weren't
I don't know what we were worrying about back then.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably, who won the Emmy or the Grammy, but yes, so that they did this back in 2016, and that's kind of fascinating to me. And I think maybe part of the issue there, Scott, just my gut feeling is that some things have come along in the last 20 years that have kind of caught us off guard.
Yeah.
You think about HIV, you think about hepatitis, and who would have thought, these types of things might have ended up becoming as lethal as they were in terms of body count. And a lot of people died from that stuff, even Ebola, back in 95, when I first heard about Ebola, Zaire outbreak, I hadn't even heard of it before that. Although there's been 21 outbreaks, it wasn't until the Western Africa outbreak that most people became aware of it, because 10,000 people died,
Yeah.
But I think it's pretty fascinating that they put this policy together. And you were trying to come up with like, well, how do you define like what is
well, fortunately they put this together, because I'll read the definition. It says the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases defines emerging infectious diseases / pathogens as those that have newly appeared in a population or have existed but are rapidly increasing in incidence or geographic range, which is the perfect way to define it. Because if you think about it, if you're mainly worried about XYZ virus, and then this new one comes out of nowhere, well, EPA before 2016 didn't have any process of being able to kind of act quickly on getting new claims. So they added a section to the master label that kind of generically covers what they call emerging infectious diseases, so that you can then make the claim that your product kills this because it kills something else that is on your label.
Well,
I don't know if that's confusing or not, but
and that makes total sense. And what's interesting is, I think for a lot of folks, the discussion about the N list, the EPA N list, which was created in January of 2020 to deal with the SARS-CoV-2, COVID-19 outbreak. I think prior to that, there weren't a lot of people that knew about these lists that are being created using the emerging viral pathogen guidance from the EPA. So, but you told me something I didn't know, that this dates way back, and since then there's been a number of lists, like the Ebola for rabbits list.
So, that was the O list.
The O list,
in July 2020.
Yeah. So that was shortly after the end list for SARS-CoV-2, and that was a rabbit hemorrhagic disease virus, but we all refer to it as the rabbit Ebola.
Yeah.
But
I'm a little worried now because what we're going to talk about is the Q list, but what happened to the P list? Why is there a jump from the O list to the Q list? But is there something we need to read into that?
I think we need to
If you know where I'm going.
challenge our audience as to whether or not they're able to determine why we deliberately left the P list off.
I don't know of a P list.
I
So,
don't know.
but it makes you wonder why they skipped a letter, though.
Yeah, I
there's maybe some. That's a future subject for a new Jancast for sure. We're going to find out why, and what happened before before the end list.
Right.
Right?
So yeah,
A
there
through
had to be an M and then an L.
Yeah, A
and
through
a
M.
K
What about
and-
A through M? Okay, well, let's not get all. I don't want to. I'm gonna have to like sit down and de-stress after.
That's
this.
one of those.
So we're now on to the Q list.
The
So
Q
Mark,
list.
I will allow you to verbalize the Q list.
So the big thing on this is everybody's hearing about this monkeypox thing. And that's what triggered the need for a new special pathogen list, the Q list, as of May of 2022.
Yep.
So this is like 30 days old, so not even maybe, but it's the Q list. And this is, this kind of reminds you of how we handled COVID. Now, the big question that comes up is, is this monkeypox thing, is it crazy? Is it lethal? Is it contagious? Is it going to be the world's next pandemic? And so, the thing that I want to caution people about is not to ignore this. And here's why. It is not as easy to spread as COVID-19, as SARS-CoV-2. It doesn't necessarily spread rapidly through the air, although all viruses can. You would have to have very close proximity and extended proximity, and it tends to spread more along the lines of contact. So it's contact with somebody else that's got monkeypox. And in fact, in some cases, it's dependent on intimate contact. And so I've heard people say, well, as a result of that, it isn't anything to worry about. But could you imagine somebody saying that 20 years ago about HIV?
Yep.
And over the last 20 years, millions of people have died as a result of that particular virus. So I think it's kind of not prudent to downplay any virus that's out there in terms of its ability to have impact on people. So we are bringing it up because it's not like people aren't talking about it here in Philadelphia, Scott.
Yep.
The Philadelphia Department of Health put out a press release saying that the first case of monkeypox was just uncovered in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it was just 10 days ago.
Yep. So that makes it worth talking about. It's why people are asking us about it. And the reality of it is, at the same time, people were asking us about it, we were researching on where are we going, and that's what uncovered the Q list and the emerging viral pathogens and the reason to bring all this back up again. And, the bottom line is that there's good news that's wrapped into this envelope. Because it's an envelope virus. And as we know from SARS-CoV-2, envelope viruses are built like an egg. So it's got a shell, that's the envelope, but it's a shell that can be broken. And once that shell is broken, it's inactivated. Unlike others that are non-envelope viruses, which are pretty hardy and they are very difficult to kill. So there are some hierarchies that disinfectants are manufactured on. When you think about it, it's pretty simple to assume that disinfectant that you'd use in the bathroom to eliminate the smell of odor might not be the disinfectant you want them using on the OR table before your surgery, right? So what you'd want there is a hospital grade disinfectant, which is commonly concentrated disinfectant, maybe mixed at 1 to 2 ounces per gallon. But that's not quite enough when you get into some of the more difficult to kill organisms, in which case very often we'll use things that might be a little corrosive or aggressive or ready to use products so that it can break the cell wall. And what we've always used in the past as test organisms on that is TB, because TB has got a very thick cell wall that's hard to break through. So that's kind of like the top shelf kind of level in many cases. And we use that on bloodborne pathogens. If there's a blood and body fluid spill cleanup involved, it's that's kind of the ranking scale that we put on these things. There's actually, most people don't realize it, there's at least 8 levels of disinfectants. And I'm bringing all that up because we are talking about an envelope virus. So the good news is we know we can kill envelope viruses because we killed SARS-CoV-2, which was an envelope virus. What we don't necessarily know is whether it's as easy to kill as SARS-CoV-2 or not. Early indications are that it might be a little more difficult because the dwell times are a little bit higher. But as we were discussing this, Scott, there was also the early days of the N-list where the kill times were a little bit higher. So it could also
modified afterwards.
It could be a little bit of conservative approach, make sure that we're not overestimating the ability to kill off this organism.
I'm looking at our current list. So we have Bullen has 9 branded products that are effective and would show up based on their EPA registration number on that list. The shortest currently is Spray and Go with 1 minute. Most of the rest are 5. But your point that some of these that are also on the N list currently have longer dwell times than the ones on the N list. So that is something that probably would change. Q list is longer. So that is something that's going to change. But again, right now we're not super concerned about it. But it's nice to know that EPA, because of their forethought and planning this out, has a process, and we already have products lined up if and when it becomes something way more serious than it currently is. And it's still serious, but
that prompted us to get out the urgent news from Bullen regarding monkeypox earlier this week. And that was just to make people aware of it, because if we're getting questions, then the assumption is other people are getting questions about it too. And so we want to really be proactive as a company that's considered a leader in pathogen control.
So we'll have the link to that document that we put together explaining what we've been talking about, as well as we'll include a link for the EPA site that goes in the, if you really want to go deep.
That should be our shout out of the day, is like the EPA's Q list website page. So
that's right.
That'll be our website shout out for the day.
So I hope everybody appreciates the information. Again, we're not trying to put the fear of whatever into anybody, but we're just trying to make sure that people know that we at Bullen kind of have our act together with products that, if ever needed, will be effective. And the EPA, fortunately, has their stuff together, planning this out properly so that you can have a vehicle and not everybody's just saying, yeah, my product kills it, just because they figured it.
My coffee.
My coffee. Or spray here. Don't wear a loaf of French bread on your face either.
I remember those
pathogen control. So next show is going to be on June 30th, and as we've done in the past, now we're going to rotate every other show. We're going to try to have a special guest, and special guest will not be defined at this particular point in time, because otherwise then it wouldn't be special.
But I know who it is.
Well, I know you and I are going to be there. So. Anything else before we sign off, Mark?
No, I just want everybody to stay healthy, stay safe. Let's go back to the old normal in a more cautious way.
And now that it's Thursday and summer kicked in on Tuesday, we're all good to go for the summer.
That works.
Okay. See y'all.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.